Hi everyone, I welcome you all to our tech podcast series. And today we are back with yet another podcast. And I'm Chavi, your podcaster of the day. And today we would be talking about technology and a lot of things. And now you might be thinking that who is our special guest for the day? So today we have Mr. JPS Kohli, who is the founder and CEO of SkillUp Group. He has such an amazing experience. It's been more than 25 years that he has the experience of cloud and the industry. So, with that note, without wasting much time, I would be very happy to welcome you, Mr. Kohli, in our today's podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Chavi. Thank you for having me on the show, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
That's amazing. So, first for all the question, I would love to know that how you started, because like 25 years is like a big journey, I would say. So would love to know something about your journey and how is it going in the present time.
Well, I have, like you said, 25 years of industry experience, but I'll kind of break it up just so that's easier to the way I see it is half of that experience has been in startups. So this is my third startup, but the first one with my own money. The earlier two was in India with somebody else's money, but very clearly I call it a semi-entrepreneurial experience where I set up the as a CTO. I joined the company, and post September 11, we got new infusion. So from a internal cost center, made it into a profit center, and grew that business. But this time, second stint is after my corporate experience with Microsoft as the worldwide director. My most significant role had been as a worldwide director for content development, commercial content development, and courseware development for Microsoft. And then the other way I look at it is half of that experience has been in India, and half of that experience has been sitting in US and setting up a global company like SkillUp, headquartered in US with India Dev Center, an India focus, as well as now more recently in Europe. So from my journey perspective in SkillUp, I think that laid the foundation. One of the common things that was there when I started in India with NIIT was the learning and training industry background. And that has been a common theme throughout my 25 years learning industry experience. But in 2016, when I started, and having spent 10 years at Microsoft in the training and content division, in the last 2 years of that experience was where I was the director for product management of online training. Essentially from a content development for commercial training, all your MCSC, MCST certification pathways and courseware related to that, my role changed to say, how do you shape online training for the future? From something that was very e-learning, self-paced mode, how do you operate in a world where MOOCs have suddenly come on, and from delivering deep learning for 500,000 or 500,000 learners globally, Microsoft started thinking, how do we touch millions of learners where they are going? And a lot of the youngsters were going to MOOCs or massive open online courseware platforms to go and consume online learning. So I think it was a very interesting phase the last 2 years at Microsoft, where I started thinking about ways to inject not only self-paced learning, but how do I bring in a mentor, a human skill program, along with a human touch to aid somebody's learning so that the learning outcomes are better. And that was such a foundational time for me to say, well, this is something I want to do. And this is all my experiences now culminating to this moment where I can have a transformational learning organization and help do that for the world at scale. And that is how the genesis of SkillUp was.
That was really fabulous, and I can feel the passion in you, because obviously, when you are at such a great level, you have spent years to get that particular level of director at Microsoft, especially. Then you thought of, okay, no, but still, I want to do something by myself. So, how was that shift? What were the challenges that you have faced while shifting your role from being a director at Microsoft to being a founder at like at your own thing. So how was that experience and what were the challenges? I really wanted to know.
It's very interesting. Not many people know about that, Shavi. But the experience at Microsoft was fabulous. I got to learn. I started in Hyderabad, heading the learning division there, and after 5 years, I was moved and transferred to US to lead the worldwide or global content development team. So it was really fabulous to do that. And while in my heart, because I had worked in India earlier, like I mentioned earlier, setting up my software dev center and US focused and the learning division and scaling that up to 200 plus people operation, and then setting up sales offices in the US. So a lot of good experience even before Microsoft in scaling a business was there. So I had the luxury of having sort of that confidence to say, okay, this is the right time. Now I also have the network and I also have a corporate experience to start something on my own. But yet it takes a little bit of a push to start. And the push came with the rounds of Microsoft layoffs. We have more recent news now as well. And without going into the details, I was caught up in that layoff. The good news was I got another opportunity right away with the kind of work that I was doing. But that nudge was enough for me to ponder and say, well, if I don't start now, then when? So I decided to not take the job back or another job that I had, but instead start SkillUp because I just believed that this is something that is something that I want to do. And when I think about transformational learning, we were at the cusp where you had learning from others or learning from gurus or instructor was the model earlier. And then the space I was operating in is e-learning or online learning, which now is learning yourself. And there was a lot of promise of e-learning saying you can learn anytime, anywhere. But what we discovered was that only 3 to 5% of learners are self-motivated enough to learn on their own. And others require some sort of a support, either a push or nudge from the parents, instructor, a sibling, a friend in their same training class or peers. And so, kind of having that blended learning model was really transformational in my mind at that time. So we said, yeah, let's kind of now bring the pendulum to the middle, where, it's not just learning from others or learning on your own, but really applying what is best and right so that I can learn faster and retain longer. And that's how, was the whole mission of SkillUp.
That was really great and I really loved it. And when you started, so right now we think that things have started online. We started understanding that what is the actual potential of this e-learning and things. But when you started, how was it? Were you having some hybrid mode? So wanted to understand the SkillUp mindset from you in the initial phase.
Yeah, so in the initial phase, we just as, given the initial phase, I would say the power of the network that I had built, I realized was really helpful. A lot of people, when they found out that I had started on my own and I didn't even know how, there were some initial projects, but my network kind of almost reached out, many of them saying, hey, I want to solve this issue. I've been grappling with exactly the same topic. And my role last 2 years, as I mentioned in Microsoft, was transforming the online training, which meant I was already talking to a lot of other learning partners of Microsoft and kind of nudging them to say, you got to transform your business. The classroom model is no longer working. So, how do you take learning online? How do you use data and add other service elements? So there were a lot of those pieces that we ended up implementing. I was already training on. So I said, okay, how do we now start putting some of these early blocks in place and start putting my thinking process? And we started getting projects around that, saying, help us in setting up a mentoring service model. As the first mentoring service model I set up for Microsoft now as a vendor with some of the colleagues that I had worked in the past and for the Microsoft professional program. Around future skilling area, data science was one of the projects that we did with Microsoft and Bellevue Community College here in Seattle area, and we showed how a blended training can have a huge impact on learning outcomes. And that was such a success. We completed about, the cohort had a blended model or a flipped learning model where the students, it was a continuing education program. They came in, 3 days a week after their regular work or college education or whatever, depending on, they were a class of 40. Some of them were students, some were working professionals, and there were 3 or 4 hours, 3 times a week that they would come in from 6 to 9 in the evening and learn. But then the model that we set up was you learn the concepts and theories online on your own, and in the classroom, the instructor is available to provide hands-on lab exercises and so on and so forth. But then we injected in that program soft skills as well, not as a separate subject item. So you're learning data science, and then we said, every week each student has to come on in front of the classroom and talk about what areas they struggled with in a lab, in trying to complete a technical lab, saying, okay, you were doing this data science problem, I struggled with this, and so on and so forth. So that allowed them to really practice as a student what they will face in a professional life when they go and work. So there were a lot of those things. Then there was a capstone project at the end of 12 weeks of the program. And we said, it was, I think, 12 or 14 weeks of the program. We said, midway in the program, 6th or 7th week, you have to go and read about what you will finish as a project after 12th week, and then come and present your thoughts of how you will address it. Again, forcing them to think, forcing them to present and talk to stakeholders and answer questions from students. So the feedback we got from students was tremendous, saying this has been a very immersive experience. And they were, I think, 95 or 96% completions, and that was really high. And Microsoft was involved in that program as well. So some of those early projects just helped me practice some of the concepts that we were talking about and really show the value. And then it started growing and having a multiplier effect. And then we just doubled down on that approach and model.
That was fabulous. I really love the explanation. And also would love to know one more thing from you, that as I can see that SkillUp is not just based out of India. Okay, it has expanded in various other countries as well. So obviously now I wanted to understand how the education pattern is different in the other countries as well. Like, are we missing out somewhere? Because while you were expanding, there were the different strategies that you might have put to expand, to nurture the other countries' students. So, would love to know the education pattern from your side in different countries.
Well, I would say there were a lot of similarities, and the way it got implemented could be different. So even when I was working at Microsoft, the data that we see is India and US are really, from a technical education audience, those were the two biggest, almost 30 to 35% of the audience. Whether if you look at MOOCs, edX or Coursera, that's the kind of split. You almost see that developer audience and technology, IT development audience is a lot more in India, and the demand is very high. So the differences could be how the college education system, or the what you call your continuing education, saying I have more options and choices when I'm working, and alongside I can go to a college and take a continuing education class. But almost each country and region is now looking at future skills, and part of it is the disruption that is taking place with all the skills like data science, AI, machine learning, and a lot of people are now fearful of how my job is going to take change. So there are government programs, there are universities who are trying to think about it, and then there are individuals, and then there are corporates and businesses who are saying, okay, how am I going to now look for talent, and what do I need to find in that talent? But the decision in the end is still going to be made by the individual. So we kind of focused very heavily on the learner. Even though when we go from region to region, so we are kind of finding that, saying we are very learner centric, saying there are two things that we would like to do for the learner. One is learning outcome. which a lot of people focus on, many tech companies focus on, is what are the skills, competencies, credentials that the learner can get in order to do their job. But the second aspect we are heavily focused on is learner outcome. And learner outcome is the why the learner is taking a technical or future skills training. And that is because they want a better job, they want a better pay, and they want to be relevant as the technology evolves. So that why drives us tremendously. So hence we will put together, if you go to skillup.online, online training platform, you will see the focus is heavily on future skills as well as soft skills, which we call human skills, because that allows the learner to come in and make sure how they use the technical skills to make a better job, a better career for themselves, and have a better impact. So that's a common theme across different regions that we ended up talking about. But more or less, every region, now we are entering Europe, countries have policies around these are the number of future skill trained individuals we want. In India, that was the same thing. In 2 or 3 years back, we did a program for foundations of AI that we launched with NASSCOM under their NASSCOM Future Skills Initiative. And it was funded by Ministry of IT, which was saying any student who completes these future skills courses based on the standards that are defined, then the government will pay 50% of the fee. And our course that SkillUp Online had developed, the Foundations of AI, ended up being the most completed course. The most number of students took that, even though we were relatively newer as far as a company is concerned and doing that. So that was a huge initiative in India. And not only that, we had 67% course completions. Again, because we were very driven by learner outcome and learning outcome. That is very important for us that students complete the courses, and whatever it takes, whether they need a mentor, one-to-one or one-to-many mentoring service, if they need a nudge, if they need somebody to talk to saying, I'm struggling with this assignment, can somebody help me? So the human element can be provided. And we were heads and shoulders above others who had their courses. So I think it was in 5 to 8% range, and we were by far, at 67% course completion levels. So those are, again, I know I kind of veered off into how we were what is the common theme across different regions, but then every country has their own particular focus area. So in US, you would find a lot of focus on getting veterans after the service completes, how do they get back into the workforce and get them relevant and into jobs that are more relevant now. So reskilling and upskilling those individuals are important. And India, it might be how do we make sure that the students who are right now entering the workforce have an opportunity to go and learn on technology areas that they can make a career for themselves from no matter which city, tier 2, tier 3 that they are sitting in.
That was really marvelous. And according to you, how recession is hampering all the mental health of the students? We wanted to understand, because right now, there's a race that everyone is thinking about. It's just a race that everyone wants to scale up. Previously, people if I talk about very minimalistic thing, people were focusing on 11th 12th NCRT, and now they are like, we want to crack that advanced. So that's how the level has been changed. So according to you, how one should run in this race, how they should play?
Yeah, it's a very important question for each individual who's kind of looking at how recession is playing. From when I looked at it from a historically perspective, and there is data available on this. I don't have it off the cuff which data report it is, but basically when you look at the earlier recessions in 2008, when you come out of the recession, the requirement for businesses and industry in general of getting more deeper in technology, so job requirements increase. So when earlier, prior to the recession, the IT requirement or job requirement, the skill requirements were more basic. As soon post recession, as you're coming out of the recession, it jumped up in terms of the more advanced skills were needed. So what happens when we are coming out of the recession, your skilling suddenly amps up. So right now everybody's more cautious, they're more bothered about the jobs are going, and the businesses may be cutting jobs. So what happens, at least in the US, and so what happens, the training budgets get cut and all of that. But for an individual, they start thinking of I need to be relevant in a post-recession world. What are the skills that would be required? So they start preparing. So I would only, if my suggestion is that don't wait for recession to hit you, or a shakeup when your company, or you have a job loss. God forbid, you should not, but in case, then it jolts you and you say, okay, now I need to do skilling. Get ahead of that curve. If you can plan it right now, as recessionary times are there, think about what are the skills that are required. The nature of the marketplace is changing with AI and data science, machine learning. They're going to displace jobs, but they're going to displace jobs. Now you are able to do, with the recent chat GPT buzz that has been there, you are just able to do things faster. So as a writer, a lot of your work that you were doing now can be done as a first draft, can be done by these AI engines. And so if you go ahead and adopt that and say, okay, now it just gives me to do that thing faster, like a word processor from a typewriter shift did not mean that my work went away. I was just able to do things faster. So making sure you're staying relevant to today's and tomorrow's world requires skilling. And what I say is that we are not in the business of just learning outcome and just nudging people to say, go and take your skills and credentials. We truly want them to have deeper learning and higher retention. And part of that, we always end up saying that you have to then put in the sweat and blood that is required. We can help you in a way to, kind of get there. And so starting to think about it earlier than later is what advice I can give on individuals.
That was really great, and really loved the advices at the same time. Thank you so much, Mr. Kohli, for providing such an insightful knowledge to us. And I'm pretty much sure the viewers might have loved it. And also, I have dropped Mr. Kohli's socials in the description below. You can have a look into it. Don't forget to connect with him, because the learning that he can provide to you is really fabulous. So with that note, thank you so much again for joining in today. It was really great experience for me to hosting you today.
Thank you, Chavi, for having me. And I hope your viewers can take some nuggets out of my discussion. But it was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much. And for the viewers, stay tuned for such amazing podcasts like this. Till then, see ya. Have a good day. Bye.